crime creates harm, harm creates obligations, and those affected should have a role in addressing that.
We look for a person's strengths. Every person has inherent strengths.
What we're after here is healing relationships.
The loss of trust is a fundamental harm of crime, and that the restoration of trust is a basic need.
The Center for Community Justice has 7 different programs, and they all work under the principles called Restorative Justice. That crime creates harm, harm creates obligations, and those affected should have a role in addressing that. In restorative justice, we ask questions first. Who has been hurt? What are their needs? Whose obligations are these? Who has a stake in this situation? And what is the appropriate process to involve stakeholders in an effort to put things right? So restorative justice creates spaces for people to heal from harm, whatever that looks like for them.
The Family Mediation Program is an opportunity for families in Elkhart County that are discussing issues of child support, child custody, parenting time, to work with a mediator to develop an agreement that works for them, for their family, and for their children. How do we do this thing when parents don't live together, when they're raising children separately? Rather than being on opposite sides of the table, I think restorative justice offers that third option of maybe, we can be here, maybe we can try something different, and maybe we can look at the individuals, the human beings that are involved.
The Community Service Restitution Program aims to provide alternatives for the courts and for probation officers to traditional fines and incarceration. In conventional punitive justice, crime is met with incarceration or with fines. So they get out of jail and they have a surplus of anger and a deficit of money and support. So we try to find them work sites where there are mentors who are available to take an interest in their life and how these people are trying to make right.
And we meet with them before they start doing their community service to hear their story. We have that initial conversation, we call them intakes, with the clients because it really helps to frame the foundation of their community service. Otherwise, community service could just be viewed as kind of a punitive sanction to say, you did something bad and now you're going to have to do this. And we have that appointment so that we can hear their story and understand where they're coming from, see if they feel responsible for what they did or if they're just trying to shirk responsibility for it, and to hear how it's affected them and to help them reflect on who else it's affected.
I think it's the only realistic response to the levels of crime that we see in our communities. It's becoming increasingly obvious that locking people away the way that we do in America isn't a sustainable solution.
Sometimes we don't think about the men and women who are being released from incarceration coming back into this community as people who need help. The fact is that these men and women don't want to go back. I've never talked with anyone who's been incarcerated, and I've talked to a lot of people who've been incarcerated. Nobody's ever said, I love being here and I can't wait to get back. The Transitional Coaching Program works with men and women who are being released from the Indiana Department of Corrections. And as they're being released, they're re-entering back into Elkhart County. And through that transition, we provide them with coaches, men and women who help them find housing, help them secure employment, help them with all the different obstacles that they have to get over. So our coaches are an option. They're a positive option, a pro-social option. That's the potential that volunteers have in this program, is to step into somebody's life and say, I do care and I am real, and you know what, even if you screw up, I'm still going to be there and I'm still going to like you and I'm still going to help you get through this process.
The Victim Impact Panel is a program that was started in 1993 with 2 goals in mind. They wanted to reduce drunk driving and also, as a result of that, increase public safety. And so we have a team of volunteer speakers who comes in, they take turns addressing an audience of people that have an OWI charge. So they were charged with driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And all of our speakers have been involved in an OWI crash, either as the victims or as the person responsible. So these are very brave people. They're talking about probably the single worst thing that has ever happened to them. I believe the community benefits through the power, again, of the storytelling, that they're connecting that this happened to a local person. It happened on their way to the grocery store. It happened on their way to visit friends. It's not something that couldn't happen to them. Our hope is that out of the approximately 2,000 people that we reach a year, that if they're impacted by this experience, if they change their behavior, if they reach out to somebody else in addition and say, listen to this story that I heard, I'm really going to make a difference in my behavior. If we save a life, then we have done our job.
The loss of trust is a fundamental harm of crime, and that the restoration of trust is a basic need. And so the hope of restorative justice processes like victim offender mediations is that at the end, the seeds have been sown for that broken trust to begin to grow back. The Victim Offender Reconciliation Program, which we call VORP, is a program that seeks to empower victims of crime to hold offenders personally accountable for the harms that they've caused, as well as seeks to support offenders in taking steps towards making things right with their victims. Historically, the criminal justice system has focused on questions such as what law was broken and who broke it and what punishment do they deserve. While these are all very important questions, they don't necessarily fully address the experience of those who are involved in crimes. And so restorative justice takes a different approach because it views crime fundamentally as harm that's caused to people and communities. And so this requires asking a whole different set of questions. VORP then is a process that brings victims and offenders together to explore these questions. It is a personalizing and humanizing process, and one in which they can ultimately each have a voice in determining what steps need to happen towards making things right.
I think that if we live our lives in fear and not knowing any details about why we've been a victim of crime, life is unsafe and insecure. And as humans, as we are all connected in this community, it's important that we don't live like that, that we live with safety and love and trust. And by directly addressing wrongdoings, we can get to that point of trusting our community and feeling safe in our home and with our neighbors. And that's what restorative justice in the Center for Community Justice we do.